Welcome to Looking at Legal Stuff. Today we have an evidentiary hearing in a case with a couple where Dad has agreed to supervised visitation due to his admitted anger management problems. But now he says he's done what he needs to for the court to expand his visitation. But Mom really doesn't want that. She says his anger management and bad judgment are still a problem. In fact, not only did Dad recently ask his 9-year-old child to watch his 2-year-old baby so he could play a video game during his supervised visitation at an arcade, and then got upset with the child when the baby got lost for a minute, and a bystander even told Dad to stop. She says that Dad needs a new supervisor because his aunt doesn't watch him with the children properly. So Mom says that the psychologist who recommended that Dad have supervised visits told her that she could be a second supervisor if she felt that was warranted, so she decided she'd follow Dad at his next visitation from a distance. Dad said she didn't ask him if he was okay with it. She just unilaterally decided she was doing it, and he doesn't think she should be allowed to keep following him. But what does the judge think?
All right, then we're ready to take up the Duffy versus Duffy, correct? All right, the rule has been requested. Anyone who's going to testify in this matter must go outside the courtroom, other than the parties, must go outside of the courtroom and remain outside of the courtroom till you yourself are called to testify. Counsel are under a continuing duty to ensure that the rule is complied with. All right. Ms. Morris, you want to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. So we're here on my client's motion for temporary parenting time with the children. We were here previously back in June on that motion as well as some other matters. And at that time, the court did enter an order that was an agreed order announced in court by both parties. It was entered on June 4th. I have a copy for the court if you'd like me to pass it up.
I have the file here before me, so. But if you want to make a copy of the order, that's fine.
Oh, no, I have copies. I just didn't know if the court would like a copy. I just wanted to call the court's attention to the fact that basically my client, in light of the concerns that were raised by the mother, had agreed that he would start off his parenting time with supervised time every Sunday, supervised by his aunt, Connie Russell. And he's also agreed voluntarily that he would submit to a psychiatric evaluation, that he would enroll in some anger management classes. And on the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3, it was indicated that the parties anticipated that when we came back today, August 30th, that it would be the goal to have his parenting time be expanded and have the conditions be revisited so long as he's complied with the terms of the order and the interim visitation has gone well. We filed this morning, and I can pass up a copy for the court if you would like. Mr. Duffy did complete an 8-week anger management program in person, and I have his certificate. Would Your Honor like a copy of that?
The one that's been filed.
Yes, it was filed today.
Well, let's go ahead and, this is the completion of the parenting seminar. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I filed both this morning. One was a notice of filing of his completion of that anger management course, and that was specifically what was ordered in that agreed order by the court back in June. He also did complete the parenting seminar that's required for all divorcing parties with respect to co-parenting. He also did submit to psychological evaluation with Dr. George Davis. That was the agreed upon evaluator myself and Ms. Duke agreed to. And he also has been going to see, and this is referenced in Dr. Davis's report as well, he's been working with a private therapist. Basically, he's trying to do everything that he needs to do to address any concerns that this court may have and to spend as much time as he can with his children. And we do think that it would be appropriate at this time for his supervision to be lifted and for his parenting time to be expanded. If the court turns to Dr. Davis's evaluation that was submitted, he does recommend that it would be appropriate for my client to be able to pursue a lifting of the supervision requirement upon completion of the anger management. I know opposing counsel is probably going to point out the fact that Dr. Davis asked for 12 hours. We did 8. The reality is that we had him enroll in that 8-hour class pursuant to the order that was entered in June. We did not receive Dr. Davis's evaluation report until a couple of weeks ago. My client is happy to continue with his anger management. He can report to the court today that he does feel that it's helping him. And in fact, Dr. Davis's report indicates that the mothers of all of his children have indicated that they are observing that it is helping him. He is also working with that private therapist, so we don't think that that additional 4 hours should be a reason why it should not be time to lift the supervision at this time. Dr. Davis also specifically recommended that his time with the children in this case, which is a 2- and 3-year-old child, align with the visitation that he has with his older children. He has 2 8-year-olds and a 10, or actually I think they're 9 now, 2 9-year-olds and a 10-year-old or 11-year-old with his first wife. And he has a 50-50 parenting schedule with them. So he sees them Friday to Sunday, all but the 4th weekend of the calendar month during the school year. And then in the summer, he has them most of the time. I think it's the opposite, where mom has them on the weekends. And so what we're asking the court is if he could please have the children, in this case, on the 1st and 3rd weekends of the calendar month. That would coincide with his visitation with his older children.
All right.
We do have some concerns, Your Honor, about interference with his visitation by the wife and trying to sort of goad him into an anger response. He understands that there are concerns about his anger and management of his anger, and these are all the things that he's trying to address. But we feel that at this point, we also need an order for the wife not to be following him during his visits, not to be trying to interfere in his visitation in any way. There was an issue a few weeks ago. It started with his visitation on the 10th, which was canceled. The wife told him that she needed to cancel the visitation because the children were sick and that they would be going to the doctor the next day. In fact, he called the doctor's office. They never went to the doctor the next day.
This is argument. I'm not considering it as evidence, so you'll be able to respond in kind if you'd like.
Several days later, it was brought to our attention by opposing counsel that actually the wife was concerned about an incident that had happened the weekend before that canceled visit, which is August 4th. They alleged that there was an incident in a bowling alley and that was the real reason the wife was withholding the visitation. Again, my client offered that he's not trying to create a problem here. He wants the wife to feel comfortable about his visitation time with the children. He agreed that he would forego his visit that coming weekend so that Dr. Davis could weigh in on this incident, and you'll see that was in his report. Apparently he yelled at the child at the bowling alley, but there was no basis, according to Dr. Davis, for the supervisor to have stopped the visitation. He will testify today about exactly what happened at the bowling alley. We don't think that there's really anything there that would warrant stopping his visitation, changing the supervisor. Nonetheless, the following week, the wife insisted on following him during his visitation time. She had emailed him and said that she was going to be the supervisor, made that decision unilaterally. He picked up the children. She followed him in his car. He eventually decided not to take them to an activity and go home. She waited in the driveway. And, he's very concerned that she's trying to goad him into some kind of a confrontation, putting these children in an unsafe situation. So at this time, we'd really like to ask that in addition to him getting his parenting time expanded and that supervision lifted, that she be ordered not to do that, to not follow behind him, not show up at his home during his parenting time, so as not to create other problems between the parties and have the children have to witness any kind of conflict. It was very uncomfortable for the children.
You reviewed the psychiatrist's report.
Yes.
Do you understand the psychiatrist is recommending a reduction of time with the children rather than an increase?
I didn't read the report to say that he was recommending a reduction of time. I said that he thought that the time should be limited.
I want to look at it again.
He only has 4 hours of time on Sundays right now.
I understand, and I'm not disputing that's all he has and it's supervised by his mother. But on the last page of this, it says again, a recommendation of more limited parenting time is offered. Goes on to say the court may wish to limit his overall time with the minor children and recommend that any visitation occur when all the children are present and there are more eyes. So, it all depends on how you read it. But it certainly seems to me Dr. Davis is not recommending more visitation, he's recommending more limited visitation.
I don't think I mean, I didn't take that to mean that he was recommending that it be limited beyond what it is now. He only has 4 hours a week right now, supervised time.
Excuse me for interrupting you, Ms.
Sure.
Morris, I'm sorry. What do you think then? Interpret for me, if you have that report before you, again, comma, a recommendation of more limited parenting time is offered.
I think it just means that obviously, we're not looking in a world where we're going to get anything near a 50-50 schedule. He was very clear that he thinks that the court may wish to limit his overall time with the children. He specifically recommended that visitation occur when all the children are present so that there are more eyes on his behavior. And again, those older children during the school year are with Mr. Duffy every weekend from Friday to Sunday, except for the fourth weekend of the calendar month. And then he does go on to say that he could apply to the court, perhaps he can apply to the court for unsupervised time after completing anger management with a licensed professional, which he has done. And Dr. Davis has not met with my client except for the evaluation that he did back in the beginning of July before he had completed his anger management. The only additional evidence he reviewed was this information that the wife's attorney provided about the incident at the bowling alley, which again, he did not think warranted any kind of further action. And he was reviewing that in the context of, is there a problem with the supervised visits that are going on? Because that was what happened. That incident took place during his supervised visitation on a Sunday with Ms. Russell. And he said right here that he cannot see that he violated the orders. He does not believe that he acted in an unreasonable manner, given the importance of the child's assignment to watch his sister. He does say he appeared to be emotionally intense and perhaps too intense. And the bottom line is my client is not denying that he has some issues that needs to be worked through. I think he's done a actually notable job of coming forward and acknowledging these issues and trying to work through them and trying to do the best that he can so that he can be in these children's lives.
All right, let me hear from Ms. Duke.
Judge, you nailed it on the head just a second ago. Absolutely, his visitation needs to be even more limited, and we need to get a different supervisor because his supervisor did not abide by the terms of the order. Dr. Davis simply went from what Ms. Morris told Dr. Davis and what I told him about the order. But there was a caveat in the order that said, Ms. Russell, who is the person who is supervising, it's his aunt, and I will say my client would testify that she had concerns about Ms. Russell, but capitulated at the last hearing in hopes that he would get his act together. Notwithstanding, Ms. Russell shall have the children within her sight at all times during the husband's interim parenting time. We've got the video from the bowling alley, and it shows those children are not in her sight. As a matter of fact, one of the children get lost after Mr. Duffy has his child with ADHD watch that child. And her back is turned to the entire scene the entire time. Then, if anything is to happen, Ms. Russell shall immediately end the husband's visitation and contact the wife in the event that the husband violates any of the orders set forth herein or otherwise acts in an inappropriate manner. Dr. Davis says his behavior with the child that failed to watch the baby, Judge, we're talking about a 2 and 3-year-old that are right here. These babies, they're little, cannot protect themselves in a public place. He can't even keep up with those children, and neither can the supervisor. Dr. Davis said he failed to act in an appropriate manner, and we are asking that supervision remain, he be required to complete the remaining 4 classes, and that his time be restricted, and that we be allowed to choose another supervisor that will contact my client when something else happens.
When you say that his time should be restricted, he only gets like 4 hours as it is.
I'm just saying to go by what Dr. Davis says, and maybe we let him help dictate what happens. Dr. Davis has been extremely objective in this. I made a misstep with Dr. Davis in that I told him that he pulls one of the children up aggressively by his arm. In my position, he grabbed him aggressively, but he did not pull his arm up. So Dr. Davis in his report, I think, discounted some of what we said based on my reporting to Dr. Davis what my observation was. At this point, though, I do think that it needs to be restricted, at least supervised, even if the time remains the same. I will absolutely tell this court that I told Ms. Morris that we were still not comfortable with Ms. Russell supervising the visit after what I visually saw happened on that video from the arcade at the bowling alley. Had we not had that, Dr. Davis would have been dismissive of it, but we took the time to get the video from the arcade. The video shows, because of his reaction and yelling in that child's face, somebody, and they're standing behind a machine so you don't see them, but you see their hand reach out to him to tell him to stop, and then he starts blessing them out in front of the child. You can't hear any of it, but you can see it. And because Dr. Davis could not see the bystander that got involved at that time, he didn't make much note of it. But I would say that if somebody is willing to step in that knows neither of these parties, then there was something terribly wrong with how he was handling that situation, and it did violate the order, and Ms. Russell should have contacted my client immediately. The only reason my client got any wind about what happened is that the two 9-year-olds and the 10-year-old were visibly upset when they got home and told their mother, who would be a witness in our hearing today. And the court kind of going backwards, his time with the other children has been limited and taken away at times by the Department of Children's Services because there was a report that he punched one of the kids in the stomach. Do I think he's intentional about any of this? I think he's got a mental health issue that has to be addressed. I don't necessarily think his actions are intentional, but he can't control his behaviors, and it's obvious. It's obvious even when we're talking in a back room all together and he can't control his emotions. So that is our position. This is not the first time DCS has ever been involved in this case or in the case of the other children. And had we had a hearing on this the last time, Your Honor would have seen videos where he stays on his phone, doesn't pay attention to the children, and if the children said anything to him, he cusses them, threatens them, says he's going to throw them across the room, do things like that. But Your Honor didn't have to hear those because we reached that temporary agreement. That's our position, Judge.
All right, Ms. Morris, you may call your first witness.
Would the court be willing to hear from Dr. Davis by phone?
I don't know how we can hear from Dr. Davis by phone, via phone. He can come in on the Zoom link if he wishes.
Okay, can the court provide him with a Zoom link?
Pardon?
Is there a link that I can provide him with?
We can provide you with the Zoom link, and he can appear in person on the Zoom link.
Okay.
Here is the Zoom link. I've got it right here. He goes to Zoom. Those are the login for the meeting number and the password.
Thank you, Your Honor. He should be logging in now, Your Honor.
You have another witness you want to have testify?
I do. I can have my client testify in the
All
interim.
right. You can call your client
I'll
up.
call Daryl Duffy.
Mr. Duffy, come up, please.
Yes, sir.
And can you state your full name for the court, please?
Daryl Allen Duffy.
And
Mr.
Mr.
Duffy, we
Duffy,
have a rainstorm going on overhead. If you'll pull that microphone, try to speak directly into it, if you will.
Yes, sir.
and you're married to Brittany Duffy,
That's correct.
and you have 2 children,
That's correct.
and you have children from a previous marriage.
That's also correct.
And can you tell the court their names and ages?
Ella is 11 or almost 11. Jackson and Parker are 9.
And your children with your current wife as well?
Addie or Adeline and Layla.
And they are 2 and 3, is that correct?
3 and 2.
3 and 2.
Respectively.
Okay. And when were you and your ex-wife divorced?
2017.
And since 2017, what kind of a parenting schedule do you all follow?
For the most part, it's been 50-50.
Is there a current permanent parenting plan in place?
Yes.
And is that permanent parenting plan 50-50?
Yes.
And can you describe to the court the specifics of that schedule when you
Absolutely.
see the children?
During the school year or during school sessions, I receive the first 3 full weekends of the month. Mom receives the last weekend of the month along with all school days. Any school days that are not in session, for instance, Labor Day is coming up, I will have the full Labor Day weekend, including the Monday. I have all of their fall break, all of their spring break, and all but 10 days during the summertime.
And how is that going? Can you tell the court a little bit about your relationship with your older children?
It's going very well. Me and the boys just recently did a impromptu visit down to downtown Nashville to watch some motocross. And take them to different places, the zoo, the aquarium, the Frisk Museum.
Now, you heard opposing counsel say that there have been times when your parenting time has been taken away. Is there truth to that assertion?
Yes.
Can you tell the court about that?
Yes. In October of 2023, there was an issue, an allegation of me punching or hitting one of the children in the stomach or chest. At that time, a order was placed of no corporal punishment.
Well, let's back up. You said that there was an order for you to not have contact. Was that a temporary ex parte order?
It was.
When you returned to court on that request for no contact, was that denied or granted?
It was denied.
And that was in front of Judge Hagan in the General Sessions Court in Wilson County?
That's correct.
I'm going to show you a document. Mr. Duffy, can you tell the court what this is?
This is a document from the General Sessions Court that was filed from Judge Hagan.
Is this the order after the hearing that you all had following that incident?
It looks to be yes.
Okay. And do you see on page 2, it says the ex parte restraining order entered on November 9th is hereby dissolved?
That's correct.
And so that was your understanding that while the TRO was entered, your parenting time ultimately was not restricted after the court had a hearing?
That's correct.
And so after this, you were able to go back to your 50-50 parenting schedule?
Yes.
And you are still having your 50-50 parenting schedule to this day?
Yes.
Has there ever been any other times that your parenting has been suspended?
Yes, I had to do kind of the same scenario, as well as it had nothing to do with physical. It was just mom being
When was that?
2018,
Okay.
2019 maybe.
So since 2018, you've had this 50-50, which was shortly after the divorce.
Correct.
You've had this 50-50 schedule with the exception of this TRO that was in place, it looks like just for a few weeks.
Correct.
And the court did order that you should be restrained from any corporal punishment, is that
Correct.
correct? And can you tell the court, did you punch the child in the chest or stomach?
No, I did not.
Can you tell the court what, if anything, did happen?
So that specific day, as we were getting ready, I was loading a vehicle outside, came back in, where I was notified by Miss Brittany Duffy that one of the children had disrespected her, and per her quotes, I need to whoop his ass, end quote, in which I took him to the other room, where I leaned him over a bed rail and I spanked him 3 times. He fell dramatically to the floor and cried. After I pointed at him and I told him to go sit on the couch until we were ready to leave.
Okay. Tell me about your discipline of the children.
Most discipline is because I'm not there during my parenting time. Brittany Duffy was the person that watched my children because due to work scheduling and the times that I did have them. But most of it would be raising my voice, yelling, and rarely spanking.
And since the court order, have you spanked at all?
No.
What kind of discipline do you use now?
Now I do corners, but for the most part, there really hasn't been any issues.
Okay. And at the same time that TRO was entered, there was an investigation by the Department of Children's Services?
That's correct.
Was any action taken by the Department of Children's
No,
Services?
ma'am.
And I'm going to show you another document. Mr. Duffy, is this a letter that you received from the Department of Children's Services?
It is.
You speak up. What's the basis of your objection? Hearsay, Your Honor. Would appear to be hearsay, Ms. Morris.
Well, it's, and I'll just use my client's testimony. I would like to enter into the evidence, though, as an exhibit, the order from Judge Hagan's court.
All right.
Mr. Duffy, is it your understanding that the Department of Children's Services has cleared any allegations as being unsubstantiated?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay. And no action was actually taken? There was no action opened by the Department of Children's Services against you?
As far as I'm aware, that's correct.
But they did come out and talk to you and investigate the situation?
Yes, they talked to me and they toured the house.
When this all happened, you and Brittany, your current wife, you all were still living together and had not yet separated, is that right?
That's correct.
What was her reaction to you? What did she say to you about the situation that was unfolding?
That she was very pissed off at my ex-wife
Why?
because she shouldn't have had to deal with DCS coming into the home.
Did she think that you had
And-
done anything wrong
No,
that would warrant that kind of intervention?
no, ma'am. Not that I was aware of.
What about when you went to court in front of Judge Hagan? What was her reaction to that?
She didn't even go, but her reaction once I got back and I told her what had happened was, see, exactly that's what we thought it was going to be.
So she did not think that your ex-wife's request for your time with the older children to be taken away should happen?
No.
Did she say whether she thought you were a good father, whether she thought you were an abusive father?
Previously, in a previous court case where she did testify, then yes, I was a great father.
So she testified in a previous court action between you and your ex-wife?
Correct.
Is that the incident that you're referring to that happened shortly after the divorce in 2018?
No, this was 2020 after domestic violence on the mom's side.
Okay, so there was a domestic violence incident in your ex-wife's home,
Correct.
and there was some discussion of that in court in terms of the schedule that you all would follow?
Correct. There
And-
was, during that time, there was her visitation time had been limited within supervision.
Okay. And your current wife went and testified on your behalf at that hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Now, was this before or after your children with your current wife were born?
This was before,
Before, okay.
right before, actually.
Now, when all of this happened with this child that you spanked, was that Parker was the child that
That's
was
correct.
spanked in November? What is your reaction to the situation? Do you feel that you could do better with Parker?
I could do much better with Parker.
What actions have you taken?
A lot of it has been going through the anger management class, speaking to my personal and Zoom therapist, and just talking to him, letting him get his frustrations out and letting him do stuff, not be cooped up inside of a bedroom all day.
Does Parker have any special needs?
Yes, he has ADHD.
And can you tell the court how that presents itself?
He tends to be very emotional and aggressive.
And can you give some examples of what that behavior is like?
If he doesn't get his way or if he feels left out, he screams, yells, cries until either he still doesn't get his way or we make accommodations for him.
Is it different dealing with him than with your other children?
Him versus everybody else, yes. As a whole, no. I try, especially the older kids, I try to collectively take care of them.
But does he present different challenges to you?
He does.
Do you have to discipline differently with him than with the other children?
For the most part, their discipline falls in line with what his disciplines would be now.
Okay. Do you feel like you have been able to get the resources that you need to deal with the ADHD and the symptoms of that?
Yes.
What are you doing in that respect?
Again, I went to the anger management classes. I've learned a lot there. I did the parenting classes. I've learned a ton there about being flexible. Speaking directly to an in-person therapist and a Zoom therapist separately. There's been a lot of different things that have come to light on my end.
And have you been diagnosed with anything since you've been working with a therapist?
Yes, I now see a psychiatrist, and I've been diagnosed with ADHD myself.
Has that helped to receive that diagnosis and that treatment?
Yes, it has helped quite some, and I'm learning a lot more about my functioning ADHD.
Does that help you deal with Parker?
It does.
What about in terms of interacting with the other children?
It does help me with them as well, because I know now really what to look for in myself as to what I'm capable of with them.
Can you give any specific examples of like a situation that has arisen and how you might have dealt with it before and how you might have dealt with it since learning some new techniques and being on your medication?
Absolutely. So the day, the impromptu visit to downtown to watch the motocross event, I had one of my children, Jackson actually, dropped a water bottle on the track, which was an asphalt track where motorcycles were running. Instead of spanking or beating or yelling at him, I told him, I was like, you know you did wrong. This is not correct. I said, if somebody gets hurt, it's on you, but you need to go sit over there next to the rail.
And have you noticed that the children react better to you?
They are reacting much better to me now.
Does that include Parker as well?
Yes.
What about the little kids? Because they're in a whole different stage of life at ages 2 and 3. Can you tell the court at all about how you interact with them and how you discipline them?
So discipline with them, there's really not any, because I don't see any faults in them as of yet. I don't know how they're going to act later, but at this rate right now, I only get 4 hours of visitation time, which is now scrutinized.
What about when you and your wife were still living together?
Still didn't discipline. The most I did was threaten a timeout chair once or twice. During that time, I was responsible for bedtime routine, getting them ready for bed, changing their diaper, reading their book, getting their teeth brushed, which I did every night for at least a year and a half.
Have you ever
if not more.
spanked the younger children?
No.
Has your wife ever spanked the younger children?
There was some poppings to the
What is a
legs. Like a pop to the leg.
Okay. Can you describe what a pop is exactly?
Just like a slap on the wrist.
Okay. Okay. So like a not very hard
Exactly.
type of a
Just a
okay.
corrective action.
Okay. And at this point, I think you and your wife have agreed not to use any corporal punishment with the children?
That's correct.
And are you following that agreement?
Absolutely.
And to your knowledge, is your wife following that agreement?
I could not attest to that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just asked him if to his knowledge, Ms. Duffy was following the ban on corporal punishment. Okay. Since we were in court last in June, you've had visitation every Sunday, supervised by your aunt.
Correct.
Can you tell the court about how those visits have been going?
They've been really good. The first couple of Sundays we went to first one we went to a park, and then the next one we went to a different park, and it just happened to be Father's Day. So we did a Father's Day / birthday party for me and Layla. The gifts, cookout kind of food. And then we went back, and then subsequently after that, we spent a lot of time, because it was so hot outside, we spent a lot of time at the bowling alley.
Have the kids been enjoying it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your aunt, has she been comfortable with the visitation supervision?
Yes.
Okay. And where are you living now, Darryl?
I'm residing at 4 Annex Avenue in Nashville.
And can you tell the court what that residence is?
It is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath brick home.
And How did you acquire that residence?
I am renting it from my mother's estate.
Okay. And is your mother recently deceased?
She is.
Okay. And have you been able to exercise all of your Sunday visitation with your two younger children?
All but the two.
Two recent ones?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell the court about that, please?
So I was notified by Miss Duffy that the children were sick on a Sunday, and she would not be bringing the children to my visitation. I did show up at that visitation regardless, and took photos of timestamps that I was on location when I was supposed to be.
Was that Sunday, August 10th?
That was.
And why did she tell you she wasn't bringing the children?
And she notified me that the children were sick and that she would be taking them to the doctor.
Did she, to your knowledge, did she take them to the doctor?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Did you ever get to speak to the children, and did you ever see any evidence that they were sick that day?
I did not speak to the children that day that I can recall. And per our Tuesday video call, they did not seem sick.
Okay. And you talked to them on Tuesdays and Thursdays by video call?
That's correct.
And have you been exercising all of those phone conversations?
All but two.
Okay. What two were missed?
There was one that was missed due to a late running in-session therapy. I called as soon as the therapy session let out, and I was notified at that time that the children were already asleep. And the second one that was missed was the day that I buried my mother.
I'm sorry to have to ask you to talk about that. And I know that was recent for you. Okay, so you missed the visit on August 10th, and then can you tell the court what happened with the visit on August 17th, which would have been the following Sunday?
The August 17th was we were waiting on the Dr. Davis to come back with a
So did you agree to
report.
have Dr. Davis look into your wife's concerns?
I did.
And you and I spoke about that,
Yes.
about the fact that your wife had some concerns about what had happened on August 4th at the
That's
bowling
correct.
alley. And you voluntarily agreed that you would forego that visit while Dr. Davis weighed in. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And we've heard back from Dr. Davis the following week, is that right?
Approximately the week or 10 days later.
And did you have an opportunity to talk to Dr. Davis during that week when you missed your visit?
I did not.
Okay. What happened the following week, the 24th, which would have been just this past Sunday?
This past Sunday, I showed up on location at the sheriff's department to pick the children up at 12 o'clock with Connie, Miss Russell. Once I had the children in possession in the vehicle buckled in, I backed out and proceeded to leave, in which I was then followed by Miss Brittany Duffy.
Did you know why she was following you?
I did not.
And how long did she follow you for?
She followed me for the 4 full hours. She followed me all the way to my residence, in which I pulled into the driveway and she pulled into the neighbor's driveway. She sat in the vehicle until my time for us to leave to go back to the drop-off spot, in which she followed us to a restaurant and then followed us back to Dixon.
Did she tell you that she was going to be following you?
I saw an email portion. I guess it was a portion of the email that popped on my phone.
And what did it say?
It just said, I'm going to be the new supervisor. I'm going to be a second supervisor or something along those lines.
She said that she was going to be a second supervisor for your visitation.
Correct.
Did she talk to you at all when you went to exchange the children and tell you that she wanted to come along?
No.
Okay. What was the children's reaction?
I had the older 3-year-old Adeline stated, Mommy's going to follow us because I'm scared.
And Mr. Duffy, you don't have to tell us what the child said.
Objection. Sustain the objection as to the child's statement.
I would like to ask you, though, were the children aware that their mother was following you?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay. Now, going back to the incident at the bowling alley, can you tell the court what happened on August 4th at the bowling alley?
Yes.
And starting off telling us who all was there and what was going on.
So I picked up the children in the 2 vehicles that we have to take at the sheriff's department right at 12 o'clock, maybe a minute before. We then drove from the sheriff's department to Thunder Alley, We logged in, we got a lane, we bowled 2 games, which was approximately 2.5 hours. Got some snacks, and then we proceeded to the arcade. The girls played some games. I played a game in which at that time I requested both of my 9-year-olds to watch after the girls for like 30 seconds. And as soon as the game was finished up, I looked up when one of them was around the corner.
Okay.
Didn't know where she was at that time.
Did you get scared?
I did. I was frantic.
Did you find her pretty quickly?
Yes.
Where had she gone?
She had just gone around the wall to another game.
Okay. And then what happened?
My Parker, my son, went around one way and I went around the other. That's when we found her. I grabbed her up and we were standing approximately in front of either a basketball game or a skee ball game right in that area. I put my hand on his shoulder to get his attention, looked at him, I was like, you know you did wrong. And yes, I did raise my voice at him. We were around video games. It was kind of loud in there. He immediately started to cry because that's what both the boys actually do when they're in trouble. They cry. A lady approached and was like, you need to stop talking to him like that. And I said, ma'am, you need to step away from us. And then she reached for him.
What had you said to him that you thought that she was referring to when she said you don't?
I think it was just the fact that I was just being loud and he was crying.
Did you spank him?
No.
Did you, opposing counsel said you jerked him up into the air. Dr. Davis's report said you didn't jerk him up into the air. Did you jerk him up into the air?
No, ma'am.
Where was Miss Russell?
She was with the other 9-year-old and the 11-year-old and the 3-year-old.
Do you feel that your behavior was inappropriate?
No,
Did you grow up in a big family, Mr. Duffy?
I did.
Was it common in a larger family for one child to keep an eye on the other?
I'm going to object. She keeps leading him, giving him the answer. I let some of it go so we could go quickly, but
Sustained, don't lead the witness.
And I'm asking because of the specific statements that are in Mr. Davis's report. So I'm curious, what was your thinking when you asked? Well, first of all, is it correct? You stated before that you did ask the 2 boys to watch.
I did.
And what was your thinking?
I wanted some time. I wanted some time, not necessarily to myself, but I wanted to enjoy the time that they were also having.
And how long were they watching them?
30 seconds, maybe.
How far away were you?
10 feet, maybe.
Okay. At this point, would you be willing to agree not to ask the older children to watch the younger children?
Yes.
Okay. What would you like to see happen in terms of your time with your children?
I would love to get more time with the girls. Yeah, I don't feel that separating me from them for the amount of time that I've had over the last 4 months has been necessarily the right opportunity or right suggestion. I've kind of gone along with it just so I can do things that I needed to get done.
Do you feel that you are better now? Do you feel that you need more treatment? What are your thoughts?
I am better than I was, but everything's a continuation.
Do you plan to continue in therapy?
Yes.
What was your relationship like with the girls before you and Miss Duffy separated?
It was, from what I understand, it was great. I was the one that did all of their bedtime routines as soon as I got home from work, because the days I had off of work, I got up in the morning, I was the one that was with them. I was told, you go take care of the girls.
You told by whom?
Brittany Duffy.
Okay. Because she was at home during the week while you were working, is that right?
She was at home during the week when I was working, but on my days off, it was my job to take care of the girls in the morning.
And what about the relationship between those girls and your older children?
They all love each other.
Can you tell the court a little bit about that?
Yeah, Ella is a huge helping hand before and after the situation that we're in right now. She loves watching both of the girls and playing with them, as the boys love building stuff with them and playing with them. They all love watching the same TV shows, Miss Rachel and Bluey and Paw Patrol and that kind of thing.
Is there room at your current house for all 5 children?
It's tight, but yes.
Can you tell the court how you can set up the house for that?
The girls in one room, boys in the other room, and me in the third room.
Okay. And is the house set up for the younger children? Is it baby-proofed? Is it?
For the most part, it can be. I already have baby gates for specific areas. They already have beds. So
And what kind of a car are you driving right now, Mr. Duffy?
right now, I'm driving a 2007 Lexus RX 350.
And that has seats how many people?
It seats 5, including the driver.
And what about your wife?
She is driving a 2015 Dodge Grand Caravan.
Okay. And there was a notation in the order from June. Do you recall that you would keep driving the car you're driving, she would keep driving the van, and that issue might be addressed today? Do you have any concerns about the vehicles?
Concerns in meaning?
Are you okay driving the car you're driving and her driving the car she's driving?
If I'm able to spend more time with all of the children together, then I do need a bigger vehicle to drive with all the kids that can fit all of the children.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
Ms. Duke, you may cross-examine.
Out with that order that he discussed just a minute ago. Can he have that back if he doesn't have it? Mr. Duffy, the judge in this case, Judge Hagan, was concerned enough about what he heard in the restraining order hearing that he not only restrained you from corporal punishment on the minor children, he included spanking, choking, pinning down, holding down, and handling the children in any way as to physically restrain them pending further court orders. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, if you'll look at that second page there in paragraph number 2 towards the bottom, is that what it says?
That's correct.
And he heard testimony about you spanking, choking, pinning down, holding down, handling the children in an inappropriate physical manner, didn't he? And that's why he included that information in the order.
The testimony was about spanking and a pinning, but the pinning had
Okay, so
nothing to do with the children.
You're telling me that the court came up with that language all on its own?
With all of that, yes. The choking didn't exist. The holding down didn't exist.
And this is all at a time when one of your children had said that you had punched them in the stomach, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You admit, sir, that you got loud with the child, correct? With Parker at the bowling alley?
Louder. Yeah.
I mean, you can see in that, have you looked at the video?
No, ma'am. I was never sent the video.
Okay. But you recall getting loud enough that a woman approached you. Did you know who that woman was?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so an independent party who has nothing to do with you is concerned enough about the way that you're handling Parker at the time to say something to you.
The fact that he was crying, I guess so, ma'am.
Okay, and then, or the fact that you were screaming, she told you that you didn't need to be doing that, didn't she?
Ma'am, it was an arcade. I was allowed because of the games.
Okay, and you turned around to her and you started screaming at her.
No, ma'am. I told
Okay.
her to leave us alone and back away.
Okay, but you yelled it at her, didn't you,
No,
sir?
ma'am. I
Okay.
was louder because of the games.
Now, you recall in your prior court order that in the event that the husband violates any of the orders set forth herein or otherwise acts in an inappropriate manner, that Ms. Russell was to end your visit. Do you recall that part of the order, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did Ms. Russell end that visit?
She did not.
Okay. Was Ms. Russell paying attention to you, Parker, or to the child that got lost that day?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And you agree with me that the prior court order required Ms. Russell to have eyes on you and on the children the entire visit, correct?
I guess so, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you put yourself and you put Miss Russell put herself into a position where that she couldn't monitor you and monitor the children, correct?
Okay,
She wasn't there where she could have eyes on you that time, right?
okay, yes, she was 15
Okay.
feet away,
And
approximately.
is this the only time that she's not had her eyes on you in any visitation circumstances?
Can you rephrase the question?
Okay, is this the only time that something like this has happened where that she didn't have visual contact on you and the minor children?
No, people have to use the restroom.
Okay, but do you go independently into the restroom or do you go with the children into the restroom?
I go independently, as
Okay.
does Miss Russell.
Okay, as do the children, correct?
Correct.
So you're not alone with the children. This is the only instance where you were alone with the children and Miss Russell didn't have eyes on you, correct?
When Miss Russell goes to the restroom,
Okay.
then she does not have eyes on me or the children.
And on this one occasion, you act like a Neanderthal with Parker. I'll
Sustained as to the
rephrase.
argumentative question.
You get
I'm
in
not
Parker.
sure what how a Neanderthal would act in any given situation, unless you have some scientific evidence to back that up.
Just a saying. I'll strike it, Your Honor. You acted in an inappropriate manner on that date, did you not, sir?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Judge, if I may have just a minute.
You may. And by the way, a moment ago, we had Dr. Davis that come in on the chat, on the Zoom link. George Davis, yes. George Davis is who she's talking about. Is he still with us? He's still with us. He is not in the hearing, but he's in the waiting room. We need to turn the lights off.
Yeah, it probably would help, Judge.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I've never been provided with a copy of
Yeah, this,
I,
well, we're not at a final hearing where the requirement of having provided in discovery would apply. This is a temporary hearing on modification, so I'm going to allow it to be played, and obviously you can observe it. If you have some objection, we'll deal with it.
Mr. Duffy, I'm going to ask you to identify some people once this starts, okay?
Okay.
Up here in this right-hand corner, is that Miss Russell?
I can't tell because of the bar,
Is that where she was at the time?
possibly.
Okay.
It looks in the correct vicinity.
Was she at the air hockey table, sir?
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's me holding his shoulder, yes, ma'am. No, ma'am, we are close, but I'm not in his face.
At the closet right there, is that a bystander right there?
I can't see a hand. I see part of a game. She's grabbing, I don't know what she's grabbing, if it was my arm or if it was the other child that was in my arm. I'm raising my voice at her to back away from us. Ma'am, it was a loud arcade, so yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's correct. She was walking towards us. No, ma'am, when we realized that Layla was not with us, she was looking for her as well. And then as soon as we found her, she started walking towards us. Yes, ma'am, that's what he always does. No, ma'am, he does it all the time. You should see the amount of shirts that he has that have teeth marks or stretched out at his neck. No, ma'am, I'm just talking to them. From the south, ma'am, I talk with my hands. Speaking to him, yes, absolutely.
Your minor child has got ADHD.
Yes, ma'am.
Which minor child are we referring to, Ms. Duke? So far, we've talked about 5 different ones.
Parker has got ADHD, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Parker is the one that you told to watch Layla, is that correct?
Can we
I
finish
told
with a
both of
screen?
them.
Yes, thank you, Judge.
You turn the lights back.
I asked both of the boys to watch the girls.
Okay, so if the boys reported to their mother that you had only told Parker, the one with ADHD, to watch this child, that would be inaccurate.
That's incorrect.
Okay, so if you had told both boys to watch this child, why did you only get on to Parker in that video?
Parker's the one that did not find her. Jackson caught up with her on the other side. Jackson's the one that handed her to me.
So he got in your good graces because even though he had dropped the ball, you didn't yell at him
Jackson got
because,
talked to as well.
well, it
Just not there.
just not in that video. Okay,
Correct.
sorry. And you had asked the Parker to watch Layla because you wanted to play a video game.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, thinking back on that, that probably wasn't appropriate, was it, sir?
Not the best course of judgment, but
Okay, and it wasn't appropriate, sir, was it for you to be holding Layla and yelling at your other child and then yelling in front of them at a bystander that was trying to calm you down?
a bystander was not trying to calm me down. A bystander was trying to pull my child away from me.
I didn't see that in the video. Did you see that
She
in the video?
reached for Parker.
So she was concerned enough about Parker, she was reaching for Parker.
She was reaching for Parker because he was crying. I tucked him behind me so she couldn't get to him.
Well, I didn't see that in that video. Parker remained in front of you while the bystander remained over here, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you didn't tuck him behind you, did you?
I went like this and pulled my arm in front of him.
When you testified earlier that you had a very large family, you only have one brother, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you've never cared for all 5 children by yourself, have you?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
On what occasion have you cared for all 5 children by yourself?
Can you tone down the hostility a little bit?
On what occasion have you cared for 5 children by yourself?
There's been multiple occasions
Name one.
where Miss Brittany Duffy has been doing photography and I had to watch all 5 children while she did a 2, 3, or 4 hour photo shoot.
On one occasion, tell me the one occasion that you did that.
There was multiple. She's an avid photographer. That's what she does.
But she hasn't earned an income for that recently.
Yes, ma'am, she has.
When was the last time she filed taxes? More than $10,000 in taxes for photography?
Last year, the year before that, close to the year before that.
Now, prior to the incident you agree with me, sir, that you did not disclose to Ms. Duffy, and Ms. Russell, to your knowledge, did not disclose to Ms. Duffy about what happened at the bowling alley?
No, we did not.
Okay. And Judge, can I ask that my computer screen be taken down? Because I'll have emails that pop up that are sensitive.
You don't want us to see them?
I don't mind but I might get in trouble with the BPR on that, so.
It's down.
Thank you, Judge.
The easier way would be for you to disconnect your computer from our systems.
See, I don't know. These two children, Adeline and Layla, are 3 and 2 years old, and they're not capable, respectfully, they're not capable of telling Miss Duffy when something goes wrong, correct?
Could be.
I mean, have they ever put together an entire sentence about their visits or their time with their mother to you?
I don't ask them.
Are they, as 3 and 2 years old, are they capable of stringing together sentences?
The 3-year-old's close.
But she's not doing that yet. She's not capable. What I'm trying to get at is if a stranger did something to her, or if a parent did something to her, she's not capable of putting into words exactly what happened, is she?
That I don't know, ma'am.
And on August the 4th, you had already had 7 of your 8 anger management classes, had you not?
6.
Okay. Your last anger management class was conducted on August the 11th, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And your one prior to that would have been the same day as this, because they were done weekly, is that correct?
That's correct. It was done after the visit.
Okay. And did you discuss with Main Street Interventions how you had lost your cool at Visitation?
I did speak to them that some issues had arisen, and that I had to talk loud because we were in the middle of an arcade.
Okay. So it was important enough to you, you knew something had happened there and you had to tell them that that had happened. But you didn't tell Miss Duffy that it had
I
happened.
didn't tell them until week 8, when I'd been notified that there was an issue that Miss Duffy had.
Okay. And you understand that Dr. Davis wants to limit your parenting time and keep it supervised. Did you just-
Objecting, well, you're objecting to the form of her question as assuming facts not in evidence? Okay, you're going to have to turn that microphone on your disc if you're going to. You touch the bottom of it and it'll turn it on. There you go.
I'm not sure it explicitly says in Dr. Davis's report that his time should remain supervised. That's something that we've been arguing about, for your honor.
think it is a matter of interpretation, but she's entitled to ask him if that's what he understands or not. But overrule the objection. Restate your question.
You understand, sir, that it is Dr. Davis's recommendation not only to limit your parenting time that you've got right now, but to also continue to restrict your visitations for supervised visitation. You understand that, yes or no?
With the caveat of completing an anger management course, in which I have.
Okay. A minimum of a 12-hour course. You've completed an 8-hour course. Is that correct? Yes or no?
The agreed upon
Yes,
order
or,
was.
sir. Yes or no?
The agreed upon order was
Have
8 hours.
you completed 12 hours?
No, ma'am, I have
course?
not
Okay,
completed
that's all
12
I'm looking
hours.
for. If you'll answer the question, that's all I'm looking for.
Okay.
And you have not completed that 12 hours like Dr. Davis suggested. Do you plan on completing that 12 hours?
If I had been given notice that I needed to complete 12 hours, I would have completed 12 hours, but I was only given notice a week and a half ago.
Okay. Did you receive a copy of this report on the 19th of August?
That was a week and a half ago.
Okay. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you received this report and realized that it says, oh, goodness, I need to do 12 hours of anger management, did you call and set up the additional 4 hours?
I have not. I had to speak to my attorney about that.
Okay. So it takes you speaking to your attorney to follow what a doctor has told you you needed to do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In this case, absolutely.
Okay. You agree, sir, that prior to our other court date, that you entered into an agreement where your visitation would be supervised because you knew your behavior had not been good? Yes or no?
I agreed upon that order.
Yes or no first. Answer it yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And
It was kind of a compound question. You put in the phrasing of it that he agreed to it because he knew his behavior was not correct. And in truth, he could say, yes, I agreed to the order, but no, I didn't agree to the fact that my visitation. So on behalf of him, I'm going to object to the phrasing of your question. Restate your question. Divide that into two parts.
I'll re-ask it. You agreed? You did not want Miss Duffy to present the evidence she had against you, recording you acting badly.
I don't know what the evidence was. I was never given a copy of it.
Okay. But your attorney knew what the evidence included, and you two discussed it. You don't have to tell me what you discussed, but you discussed what the evidence was, correct?
As far as I'm aware, my attorney never heard the evidence either.
Okay. You discussed what evidence we had with her based on representations of Miss Duffy and based on my representations, yes or no?
Yes, I guess.
Okay.
Well, let me cut to the chase. Why did you agree to supervised visitation if you didn't think you'd done anything wrong?
That's the only way I was going to be able to see my children at any time.
Okay, and you don't think that your behavior in that video or any other time has been inappropriate?
The video behavior, no. Previously, possibly, but that's up to interpretation. Over the course of the last 5 years, there's been some animosity between family members, and I think that's what's stemming a lot of this.
Okay. I'm sorry, if you want to restate, Ms. Marsh, your objection, then I'll hear it.
I'm not trying to get into
All right.
and I can strike that part of it.
We won't get into any conversations between counsel and clients.
Sir, do you know how Miss Duffy found out about what happened at the bowling alley?
No.
Did your children remain upset?
No. After we left the bowling alley, we went and shopping next door, and then I took the babies back to Miss Duffy.
Sir, you can agree with me that you've had a history during the marriage with Miss Duffy of cussing the minor children. Is that fair?
No, ma'am.
So you've never cussed them?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Sir, you understand that you can be held in contempt for lying.
I understand that.
Which minor children again?
What's the words that was used?
Hold on just a second. I need you to specify which of the children we're talking about when you ask that question.
Well, it's all of them, Judge.
All right, and if it's all of them, that's fine.
So I've cussed my 2-year-old and 3-year-old?
Yes, sir. Have you cussed your 2-year-old and 3-year-old?
Not that I'm aware of.
Have you threatened to throw them across the room?
No, ma'am.
Okay, have you threatened to throw them down?
Throw them down in what context?
Okay. I think you would have to tell me that if you're the one making the threat, sir.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Have you ever threatened your minor children? Any of them?
In what terms of threat?
Have you ever threatened them? Verbally threatened them?
Sure, I've told them I'm going to take stuff away. That's a threat, right?
I'm going to throw you out on the ground. Do you recall making that statement to them? To any
Possibly.
of them?
Possibly.
Okay. I can't put a hand on you, but you are going to put soap in your mouth. Have you threatened them with soap in their mouths?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you
When
think
when they cuss at me and drop the F-bomb, absolutely, I'm going to put soap in their mouth. And that's going to be the older children, and that's the exact same punishment their mother would use.
have you thrown a phone?
No, ma'am,
In
I
anger?
tossed a phone. It was not in anger. It was to move around a lawnmower that I was working on.
Okay. Have you jerked your 2-year-old up in the air and Miss Duffy had to come get her from you?
No, ma'am, I picked her up with one arm because I had another child in the other arm.
Okay, do you think that that's appropriate when their arms can be dislocated?
How else do you pick up two children at the same time that want to be held?
From their bottom?
Oh, when you already have one in your hand?
Yes, sir. Do you think it's appropriate to yank them up by one arm?
I didn't yank them up. I picked them up by one arm.
Do you recall going to the zoo with all the children and the mother?
Multiple times.
Okay. Do you recall an incident wherein Miss Duffy couldn't get the zoo tickets out of her wallet quick enough and you got angry and drank beer and followed everybody around the entire time but did not offer any assistance?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you didn't do that. So if Miss Duffy testifies about your bad acts, she would be inaccurate.
That is correct. She would be inaccurate.
Okay, well, tell me in your own words what you think happened that day.
That day, Miss Duffy did not bring the zoo certificate for the new membership.
And what that was completely on Miss Duffy to do. That what you didn't have any responsibility for that. Yes or no?
She told me that she had it, and it was sent to, as far as I know, her email, not mine.
Okay. And you got irrationally angry on that date, did you not?
I yelled, absolutely.
Okay. Enough so that passersby were checking on Miss Duffy.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And you did this in front of all of your children.
I don't believe all the children were with us.
Okay. Tell me the rest of the story.
As far as I know, everything went fine. I didn't even drink.
So you didn't drink any beer. So if her testimony is you drank beer and would not interact or talk to anybody else on that date, that would be inaccurate.
Yes, that would be inaccurate. I didn't drink beer.
Okay. Do you recall Miss Russell, the supervisor of your visitations, accidentally knocking the door of your vehicle with her door?
A long time ago.
Okay. Do you recall how you reacted when that happened?
Yeah, I got loud.
Yeah, very loud. Enough so that Ms. Russell stopped talking to you for a minute.
No,
Was Ms. Russell visibly upset by you yelling at her?
not that I was aware of,
Okay. Was it an honest mistake that Ms. Russell had made?
I guess.
Okay. And was your behavior inappropriate? In
I don't believe
retrospect?
so. But yelling is, going through the anger management course, it's okay to be angry. Everybody gets angry.
But, sir,
And how I portrayed myself is the difference.
but you keep making excuses for this behavior. You can agree in retrospect that yelling at somebody for accidentally bumping your car door is not appropriate.
Could be.
Could be. So you think that that's a rational thing to do? When it's an accident and it's a family member?
That I couldn't tell you.
And you want this court to believe that you're going to be okay around your children?
Yes, ma'am.
How would you have reacted if it had been your child that had dinged your door?
I probably would have yelled at them.
And to this day, you would still yell at them?
No,
wouldn't
ma'am.
because it's not appropriate, is it?
No, I'm learning.
What?
girls?
They are.
Okay, if you'll take the pictures from the bailiff, please. Tell the court the first one's name there.
This one is Adeline.
And how old is she?
She's three and a half.
And who is the other one?
This is Layla.
And she's how old?
She just turned 2 in June.
Okay, and Layla is the one in that video that you're holding, is that correct?
That's correct.
Judge, I'd mark that as the next marked.
Collectors Exhibit 3, is that right? 2?
This is 2, I think.
Redirect, Ms. Morris? All right, step down, sir. We bring in Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, if you can hear me, if you will turn your camera on and unmute, please. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can. Let me place you under oath. If you'll raise your right hand, let me place you under oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Morris. You may ask.
Good afternoon, Dr. Davis. I'm Jessie Morris. I represent Daryl Duffy. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Can you please state your full name for the court?
George Davis.
And can you tell the court a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'm a licensed psychologist and a licensed attorney. I do mostly court, as a psychologist, I do mostly court-related work. I work for Social Security Disability. I taught at Vanderbilt for about 15 years in their law and ethics for counselors. As a psychologist, I've been on the board of the Tennessee Psychological Association as a legislative liaison. I currently am on the Tennessee Colleagues Assistance Foundation board, and I function there
Hold
helping
on.
impaired psychologists. I'm sorry?
We have, because Ms. Duke forgot to turn on her microphone, you can't hear what she's saying, but she's agreeing to stipulate that you are an expert in the field of psychiatry.
Yes,
What would be the nature of
Oh,
your?
yes. We have an order on that. I didn't mean to suggest he wasn't.
That's all right. Dr. Davis, what is the area of your expertise?
Clinical psychology.
All right, then we'll classify him as an expert in that field.
Yes.
Ms. Morris, you may
And-
now ask.
Dr. Davis, you're aware that Ms. Duke and I had reached an agreement for you to conduct an evaluation in this case pursuant to the court's June 4th order.
Yes,
And did you receive a copy of that order?
I did.
And can you tell the court a little bit about what you did to prepare a report in this case?
Well, I did have I did review that order, and then I had a letter from Ms. Morris, just kind of summarizing her view of the case. I did, on July 2nd, I made a telephone conversation with Miss Brittany Duffy in order to kind of get her view of what the issues were. And I also had a phone call with Miss Ashley Blair, Mr. Duffy's ex-wife, to kind of understand her view of Mr. Duffy. And then on July 5th, I met with Mr. Duffy for several hours. That included some psychological testing. He did a Minnesota multi-basic personality inventory. And then after all of that, and I issued an initial report, I received a video that was dated 8/4/24, and I reviewed that in detail and incorporated that into an amended report.
Dr. Davis, you had written some recommendations based on your evaluation. Are you aware that Mr. Duffy currently has parenting time with the 2 younger children every Sunday for 4 hours from 12 to 4,
Yes, I believe it's supervised.
supervised by Ms. Connie Russell?
Yes.
Dr. Davis, when you wrote in your recommendations that the court may wish to limit Mr. Duffy's parenting time, is it your recommendation that he have less time than that?
No, I meant in terms of an overall final disposition of the case, not less time than he currently has now.
Do you have any thoughts about what time would be appropriate?
Well, no, I don't really want to supplant the court's judgment on that. I just think that he certainly, I believe it would be best for the minor children to be visiting when his other children are there. It may not be as frequently as they're there, but it needs to be when they're there. I just think more eyes on Mr. Duffy so that when he's not supervised, there will be other, at least peers of the children that are there.
Dr. Davis, you also wrote that you thought that it might be appropriate for Mr. Duffy to apply for unsupervised time after completing some anger management. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that would be good. I just said that I believe that after he completes an anger management for parents, which is different than just a general anger management class. And I think he really needs that. And once he does that, he may be able to come back in and convince the court that he has unsupervised time. It's hard for me to speculate at this point whether that's a good idea or a bad idea until the completion of the course, his demeanor, his relationship with the kids during supervised time. It's just, there's a lot of factors that would go into that.
Are you familiar with the course that he did take?
I understand he was in the beginning stages when I talked to him of taking an anger management course, but it was a general one.
So you're saying that the completion of the general anger management class in your mind would not adequately address the concerns that you have?
No, I think he needs one. I think it's great that he's taking that, but I do think he needs an anger management class that's oriented towards parents.
Is there a particular class you would recommend?
I don't know of a particular class right now. I mean, there are, if you go on the internet and you look for anger management for parents, you can find them.
Okay.
I do think that he should take that from a licensed, whether it's a psychologist, a counselor, a licensed social worker, a licensed marriage and family therapist. I think it ought to come from a licensed professional.
Do you think that there is, that it would help at all with the concerns that you have about Mr. Duffy having completed the 8-hour class that he had begun when you were evaluating him?
I'm sorry. I didn't turn my phone off. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question?
Yes. Do you think that Mr. Duffy having gone ahead and completed the 8-hour class that he had enrolled in when you were evaluating him, which is what he was ordered to do by the court, does that impact or influence your opinion in any way in terms of what would be appropriate for him?
No, I anticipated that he would have completed that at some point, but that in addition to that, he needs to really be focused in on anger management as a parent.
So is it your recommendation that he continue to have supervised time?
Yes, until that's completed.
Do you have any concerns about Connie Russell as the supervisor?
Well, as I put in my report, I don't think her attention in that snippet of observation was good. I think she was involved in other things. I do think with proper instructions from the court, she could remedy that. I have no reason to believe any differently, but that her main focus is to be watching Mr. Duffy and not be babysitting the kids and not be involved in any other activities.
Do you think that she was acting inappropriately or in violation of the court order by not ending that visit and contacting Ms. Duffy that day?
No, I don't think the behavior that I observed violated the court's, in my view, it didn't violate the court's prohibition against corporal punishment. So I don't think there was anything for her to report or to end the visitation. I do think she should have been on that and watching it closely, though.
You wrote in here that you did not see that he violated corporal punishment ban, nor that he acted in a totally unreasonable manner, given
right.
the importance of Parker's assignment to watch his sister. Do you feel that he acted inappropriately?
No, I think it's a serious, if you're asking a child to monitor their very young child, it's appropriate to have words with them when they don't do it. So I thought he had words with his son. He stood a few feet away from him when he had most of his words. I don't think his behavior, in my view, I didn't think it was inappropriate. I think it was on the edge of being very stern, but I thought it was okay.
What are your concerns in particular about Mr. Duffy?
Just that, based on his testing and more so than his testing than his presentation, that he's got some personality issues and anger discontrol that needs work. And so my biggest fear is that a situation that occurred right there in a public place could be that bad or worse in a private place. That's why I think right now he needs the supervision.
What are your thoughts on Mr. Duffy working with his therapist and having been diagnosed with ADHD? How does that impact these dynamics, if at all?
I didn't find him to have particular problems attending at all. I think actually I'm a little concerned with anyone taking ADHD meds in his condition. I think it tends to make them a little bit more hyped up, if you will. My preference would be that he wasn't on that, but I've seen some people that are on ADHD medicines get a little bit more agitated. And so I don't know that his attorney, his therapist, that he knows the full extent. I would like to see the therapist at least see the report, and I'd be glad to discuss it with him. But I'm not sure that the ADHD medicine is that helpful. It doesn't sound like his work history has involved discipline problems for not attending and not focusing. So I don't know that I put much weight in that diagnosis for him.
If his time is supervised, do you have concerns about his time being overnight, being longer than it is now?
Not if it's supervised.
Would you have concerns about him having a full weekend of visitation if it were to be supervised by Ms. Russell?
No, not if it's supervised.
And I think you said in your report that you would think that it would be better if it overlapped with the weekends that he had his older children.
Exactly.
And are there any other specific recommendations that you would have for Mr. Duffy?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Those are all of my questions.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Duke, you may cross-examine the witness.
Hi, Dr. Davis. How are you?
Good.
Good. We've talked a few times, but when you viewed the video, did you have anybody walk you through the video of where Mr. Duffy was and what was going on?
No, I did it by looking at the video in depth. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time on that video, going back and looking at timestamps and making sure I understood all the pieces.
Okay.
Okay.
And did you see him engage the bystander? And I mean, he has admitted today from the witness stand that he engaged that person and was yelling at that person. And his excuse for it was that it was loud in the arcade and that's why he was yelling.
Okay, I didn't see the engagement. I did see a hand reach out towards him.
Hold
Hold
Doctor.
on 1 second,
We have an
Doctor.
objection. You got to press the button at the bottom.
I think his testimony was that he was not yelling at the bystander, but that he had remarked to the bystander and that he may have been loud with her.
So
I remember him say, yes, I was yelling, it was loud in there, but either way,
I think there was some discussion about whether or not he was yelling or just loud because it was loud inside there. So anyway, rephrase your question.
would it give you any concern that he raised his voice with a bystander that was trying to intervene when he was yelling at his child?
No, not from what I saw on the video. You know, probably nothing's more irritating if you're trying to deal with a crisis situation to have a third party enter in. Obviously, it would suggest that he was over the top if a third party is getting involved. I wasn't there to see that. You couldn't really tell that from the video. You couldn't see the expression of the bystander. All you saw was an arm reach out. So it's difficult without hearing further testimony whether there was something more inappropriate that happened.
When you said he was 3 or 4 feet away from the son when he was yelling at him, do you recall the video? He was actually looming over the child within a foot.
Well, I gave my timestamps of where I thought I put that at 3 or 4 feet, but it's, you're at a distance away. He wasn't, I don't think I would say he was looming over. He was standing back. He was holding his daughter and no, I wouldn't say that he was looming over Parker at that point.
But you agree that you said he appeared to be emotionally intense and perhaps too intense.
At the very onset, when he grabbed Parker's shoulder and kind of oriented him to like, look at me, I'm talking to you. He looked like he was intense there. Again, it's an emotionally charged situation, and I'm not sure that some intensity isn't needed if a child is instructed to do something and doesn't do it, and you're putting a very small minor at risk. I do question his judgment. I'm putting an 8-year-old in charge of was it 4-year-old or whatever his sister is. I don't think that's appropriate. And but regardless, he did it, and I think it's 8 and 2. I think she's 2-year-old. I just don't think he's old enough to be supervising a 2-year-old. But so he struck me as intense. I think it was embarrassing. He's here, he's trying to be a good dad, and all of a sudden his 2-year-old's wandering off and he's upset. Given all that, I thought he was a little intense, but I didn't think it was over the top or certainly something that needed to be reported.
Did you discuss with him about what he was doing when he asked his 8-year-old to watch that 2-year-old, that he himself was playing a video game?
No, I did not have a further discussion with Mr. Duffy after viewing the video.
Okay. Based on his testing and everything that he did, does it give you concern that he was trying to take over playing and sending the 8-year-old to watch the 2-year-old, all because of a selfish need or want to play a video game, and Miss Russell was nowhere to be found around him? Sorry, that was
that was a pretty convoluted question. Could you break that down for me a little bit?
You have concerns that it was a selfish want, him wanting to play a video game by himself on his own when he requested that an 8-year-old with ADHD watch a 2-year-old?
Well, I don't know his intent in asking that to happen, whether he was because he was playing a video game. I couldn't tell that from the video that I saw. So I think
if that was the testimony today, sir, do you have issues with his parenting?
Yeah, I would think that that's not good parenting. You don't put an 8-year-old, and certainly not one with ADHD, in charge of a 2-year-old. It's not good parenting.
For your own desire to play a video game.
Right. I would agree.
Redirect, Ms. Morris.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We're going to allow you to exit our hearing.
All right. Thank you.
We're going to stand in recess for 15 minutes.
Mr. Duffy's aunt.
Do we have a Connie Russell? We have a Timothy's iPhone. That's the only thing that's in the. You want to bring them in and see who it is, please? Doesn't look like Miss Connie. Sir, what is your name?
Timothy Nagel.
Did you have a matter that you were supposed to appear in the Chancery Court today for?
Yes, it was supposed to be between 9 and 10, but Zoom's been kicking me out constantly all day long.
What was the name of the case?
Guessing Timothy Nagel versus Chesley Nagel.
Your lawyer was, what was your lawyer's name?
Zach something. He works for Hannah Burdine.
All right, well, she was here today and we heard that matter. And I have ruled on the motion. It was just competing orders, but I did go ahead and sign an order. So you need to check with your lawyer, but there's nothing else that's going to happen in your case today.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We don't have another person in the waiting area.
I think she's trying to connect, Your Honor, but I think her internet connection is not good. I don't know if the court could hear from her by phone.
You what?
Would the court be able to hear from her by phone as opposed to Zoom?
Don't hear from people by phone when we have a Zoom link. They just need to come in on Zoom if they're going to hear it. This case has been set for a while, so anybody that was going to be heard needed to have made arrangements.
Sure. Well,
Let's go. Let me find out from Ms. Duke. Are you going to have any other? You going to have proof?
The only proof I would have is
All right. Well, it is 3:35 on Friday afternoon before Labor Day weekend, and I am going to quit at 5 o'clock no matter where we are. So.
Well, I'll go ahead and if it pleases the court, I can just make my closing remarks. And if Ms. Russell is still not on, then we'll move on.
All right. Well, before you make your closing remarks, I'm going to give Ms. Duke an opportunity to put on her proof. So, Ms. Duke, you may call your first witness. Duffy, if you'll come around and ask you to raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
if you would, please state your full name for the record.
Brittany Ann Duffy.
And Ms. Duffy, you are the mother to the two minor children that we have discussed today, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Layla and Adlin? Okay. And the other three minor children, have they been in your home off and on?
Yes,
Who provides 99% of the care for the children in your home?
I do.
Mr. Duffy said he does all the bedtime routines and all of that. Was that accurate?
Somewhat.
Okay. Do you have to goad him into doing bedtime?
Yes, I have to pull him from the chair most of the time to get them to do bedtime routine.
And is he inattentive to the children when he's at home?
Yes,
Are you concerned about him having anything other than supervised visitation as it's currently ordered?
yes,
Would you ask this court to replace the supervisor at this point in time?
yes, please.
Do you have a person in mind?
I do.
Okay, and who is that?
Her name is Abby Key.
Okay, and at whose direction did you start looking for a third-party supervisor?
By the direction of Dr. Davis.
Okay, and when you could not find a third party, did Dr. Davis suggest that you follow loosely this last visit?
Yes, he said to send somebody or yourself.
Okay, and did you do your best to, tell me what you told Mr. Duffy. You heard him say he received an email and acted like he read it or didn't read it. What did you tell him in that email?
I told him in the email before I picked the kids up that by the direction of somebody who advised me that I would be an additional supervisor today, but I would keep my distance so he could have his visit.
Okay, and did you explain to him that you'd make sure you weren't seen by the children, but you would just be there?
In the email, I said that I would give him his space.
Okay. And did you do that?
I did.
Now, you heard Mr. Duffy's attorney intimate that you're on the prior Sunday that he missed his visit because the minor children were sick. She intimated that you did that because of what happened on the 4th of August.
The kids were sick that day.
Okay. And did you have to take them to the doctor?
I didn't because their fever broke and they weren't throwing up anymore.
And have you been the one to primarily care for their health care when they are sick?
Yes, all of the kids.
Has Mr. Duffy ever showed any interest in caring for them when they're sick?
No.
Okay. When August the 4th happened and you became aware of what happened at the bowling alley, were you concerned?
I was very concerned.
When you viewed the videotape, was that in line with his behavior that led up to the temporary order of supervised visitation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you viewed that video, were you concerned that he had not made any changes to his behavior?
I was concerned.
Okay. When you heard him earlier state that that it was perfectly, he didn't say it this way, but he made excuses for picking up one of the children by the arm. Can you explain to the court what you visually saw when that happened?
Are you talking about the incident at home?
Yes.
I had asked him to help hold on to our 2-year-old while I was trying to brush the 3-year-old's teeth, and he was in the chair on his phone. And when I had asked, he got angry because he had so much stuff in his hands, and he slapped the toothbrushes on the counter next to me, the table that we had, and he reached around, and I said, no, you're going to have to get up out of the chair to get her because she's wiggly. So he comes around and he proceeds to yank my 2-year-old up in the air, and I took her from him because I was afraid that he was going to hurt her.
Okay, and did he yank her up by one arm?
By one arm.
Does your concern when Mr. Duffy is under a microscope and already having supervised visitation, and then you see what happened at the bowling alley, cause you even greater concern than you had at the temporary hearing?
It does, because whatever somebody does in public, they do more so in private.
Does it cause you concern that Ms. Russell had her back to the children the entire time?
Great concern, yes.
Okay. And have you in the past had any third parties have to get involved when he acted like he did in that video? At the zoo, did you have anybody say something to him?
No, but there were looks, and there were people that were with me that made comments and called me to make sure I was okay.
Okay. Tell the court what happened at the zoo. This is shortly before your separation, correctly?
It was when I was, I think, 8 months pregnant with our 2-year-old.
Okay.
I had forgotten the gift voucher for renewing our membership at home. I thought it was my purse, but it was not. And he got extremely irate with me and was yelling at me in front of the zoo, in front of all the people that are coming in front of the zoo to go in the entrance. I had other people with me, and they were concerned, and I started to cry because I was embarrassed.
And for the remainder of that day and time, did he participate in the events of the day?
No, he was standoffish pretty much the rest of the day.
And was he drinking the rest of the day?
I believe he was drinking.
When he told you today that he felt like his behavior at the bowling alley was appropriate, does that leave you even more concerned?
Yes.
Okay. Does it concern you that a bystander had to say something to him because of his yelling?
Yes, because it was intense enough that somebody had to step in.
Okay. Do you want to keep the schedule the same and just change the who's supervising?
I do, and his older children are not with him the last full weekend of the month, and per Dr. Davis's instruction or guidance, he said that the big kids should be there, and they're not there on that weekend.
Was it the fact that the big kids were there the only reason you found out about what happened?
Yes, and I have a friend who owns bowling alley.
Okay. And in that order, it said if there was any inappropriate behavior, Ms. Russell was to stop the visit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Has she reached out to you or told you anything about what happened?
I have not talked to her since all this started.
And is Mr. Russell's relationship with, Miss Russell's relationship with Mr. Duffy, is it volatile at times?
Can you rephrase the question?
Is Mr. Duffy's relationship with Miss Russell volatile at times? Is she scared of him?
There has been instances where I believe she has been embarrassed by his behavior towards her.
Okay. Tell the court a little bit about her dinging your car on accident.
I believe we were over at the co-op in Dixon, and she, I guess, parked too close to the van, and she opened the door and it dinged the door, and he yelled at her for dinging the door. I looked over and she had a face of concern or embarrassment as she was sitting in her car for a minute before she got out of the car.
Okay. Was it rational to you that he would get that angry with a family member over an accident?
No.
Okay. And when he's, is there anything else you'd like to tell the court?
Did you cover the following part? Did you want to say anything about
Oh,
that?
yes. Tell the court about that.
The following part was, I was thinking that he would go to a certain place in Dixon like he normally does.
Okay, now this is on the last visitation where counsel took issue with you being a third-party observer.
Right.
Okay.
And I was following him because I didn't know where he was going to stop. We don't have a communication at all, and so there's no contact. So I didn't know where he was going to be going. So I continued to follow him to see if he would stop somewhere based on the advisement of Dr. Davis to supervise as a third person.
And did you keep your distance?
I did, and I didn't even pull into his property at all. I pulled into the neighbors who I know.
Okay. And absent Mr. Duffy saying something to your children, is there any reason your children would have even known you were there?
I don't believe they would have even noticed I was there because they forward face in the car.
Okay. Has Mr. Duffy disparaged you in front of the minor children, called you names?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Not recently. Has he done that in the past? Yelled at you or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have concerns that he discussed with your children that you were following him?
I believe so because I saw hand gestures in the car when I was behind him, and I have no idea what he was saying, and the kids were in the car.
Okay. And those hand gestures, were they similar hand gestures to the hand gestures he
were.
was making at the children in the video?
Similar.
Okay. Do you have concerns about his ability to control himself?
I do.
That's all.
Cross-examination, Ms. Morris.
Duffy, you've been married to Daryl Duffy for several years now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And during that time, you've always had your stepchildren in the home with you, the
I
three
have.
older children. And then when you had your two little ones, you have 5 children in the house altogether.
Yes, ma'am.
And I understand you've been a stay-at-home mom for a lot of that time.
Yes.
So a lot of that responsibility has fallen on you.
Yes.
And I'm sure it is frustrating when I've heard you describe Mr. Duffy come home and not want to get up out of his chair. And you've probably wanted some help with the children. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it sounds like you've been married to someone with an anger problem.
It does.
And it sounds like you've been married to someone who's yelled at you at times and made you feel bad about yourself and not helped you enough with the kids. Is that all fair and true?
It sounds fair.
Is that a large part of why you left?
It is a part of why I left.
And when you first left, you were recording Mr. Duffy for a while before you chose to leave him, right?
I have.
And when you first left, you called the police that night to ask them to just kind of drive by and do a safety check.
I did.
But there was no issues. There was never any police report made, any charges brought, anything like that.
No,
But you filed for an order of protection.
I did.
Were you hoping when you were recording him that you would find something that would give you a grounds to get an order of protection?
I was recording him because there was things to be recorded.
Okay. And you were hoping for an order of protection in this
I
case
was.
initially. And you would like to have not had him had any contact with the children?
That is not my overall goal.
Okay. When we came into court last time in June, you dropped the order of protection voluntarily. Yes?
Correct.
And you voluntarily agreed that he would have the supervised visitation with the children.
Correct.
And you agreed that he would do this psychological testing and he would do the anger management classes and we would come back today to revisit it.
Correct.
And isn't it fair to say that he agreed to all of that without any kind of hearing, without the court forcing him to do that? Is it fair to say that he took some accountability there?
He agreed.
And he's continued to see the children all summer? Is that
Correct.
right? Up until I think we heard August 10th was the first time that there was a visit that was canceled?
I believe so.
And he's continued to see his older children, to your knowledge. They're there at the exchanges as well?
They are now. There was a couple days that they weren't there at the beginning of the summer.
And are you aware of, in Dr. Davis's report, his ex-wife saying that he's doing better?
I believe that's in there.
Okay. Do you have any reason to think that that's not true?
Yeah, the video that we played in court today.
Okay. And you said that based on that video is why you were concerned on the 24th?
That's not the overall concern because I know his behavior. I was married to him for 5 years.
Okay. And we've already established you're concerned, you think he has an anger problem, you wanted to have that supervision in place, but you haven't never followed him before.
No.
So the 24th, you were particularly concerned based on that video that was played and all of that?
And the first time that we met in court, I was already concerned with Connie not doing what she was supposed to be doing.
Okay. But you're aware in Dr. Davis's report, he doesn't say that the supervisor should be changed, does he?
No, but he also suggested to me on the telephone that a third party could go along as an
Could
additional.
go, not
That
should go.
He advised to go.
Isn't it true that you were asking him if you were concerned what you could do that would be okay, and then he said it would be okay if he was in a public place that you could observe?
He said if another party could be there, to be there.
But he didn't put in his report, which he amended after watching the video, that a supervisor should change or that there should be a second supervisor.
And I talked to him after the amendment.
Okay, but he didn't amend his report again, and we just heard from him today that his
Correct.
report is his.
It is, Dr. Davis testified and he said whatever he wanted to say. So I think questioning her about those things is counterproductive because she hears one thing and I'm sure that you hear another. So sustain the objection is argumentative.
Okay. But you were not following the evaluation report when you decided to follow Mr. Duffy last week?
Restate the question.
There was nothing in the report that said that you had to follow him at that visit last week?
No, but I was told to supervise as another party, so that's what I did.
Okay. And did you tell the children that they should be scared of their dad?
I have never told him that.
And so would there be a reason why the kids would have said something about that to him?
Can you repeat the question?
If you were to hear that they had said something to him about being scared, about you telling them that they should be scared, is that?
I've never told the kids to be scared of their father.
Okay. Now, you testify that there were some incidents at the zoo that took place. You said you were pregnant with your 2-year-old?
I was.
So that would have been about 3 years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Close.
And was the car dinging incident around the same time?
No, that was later. That was within the last 6 months.
Okay. And with the zoo incident, after that incident, did you talk to Mr. Duffy?
I have talked to Mr. Duffy on multiple occasions.
Okay. And you continued to have his older children coming into your home. Isn't it true that you supported him through some custody fights with his ex-wife?
I have.
And you thought that he should have more parenting time?
I thought that it was fair that they both had equal time for that situation before all this stuff started happening.
And isn't it true that you testified in court that he was a good father?
I don't recall what I said that day.
Okay. Does that sound like something that you would say, or does it not sound like something you would say?
I don't know. I don't recall.
Do you think he's a good father? Do you think that he is close with the children?
I think that he could be a better father and that he's not in a good place right now.
Would you agree, though, that it would be not in the children's best interest to not have contact with him?
I have never said that. I want him to be stable and I want him to have his stuff together before he has visits with my kids.
And do you appreciate the fact that he has taken a lot of measures since this divorce action has been pending?
I do, but I don't believe it's enough.
Okay. And you had mentioned that you would like the supervisor to change to Abby Kent. Who is she?
Abby Key.
Abby Key.
Yes.
Who is she?
She is a person that we both know. She used to be Parker's tutor, and she has a lot of experience, probably 30 years of experience with children and children with special needs. And she would be somebody that would actually notify me if there was something going on that I needed to be notified about.
So you know her in a professional capacity?
I know her in multiple capacities.
If she were to be a supervisor, wouldn't she charge for that?
She might.
She probably wouldn't be available for more than a couple of hours at a time. I mean, she wouldn't be able to supervise overnight, would she?
Yeah, but that's not where we're at right now.
Okay. And you have not actually observed any problems with the drop-offs and pickups, in terms of the supervision of Miss Russell? Have you observed any incidents at drop-offs or pickups that are concerning to you?
Not at drop-offs and pickups.
Do you have contact with the children by phone during their supervised parenting time?
No,
Okay, so Ms. Russell's there at every drop-off and pickup, correct?
she has been.
Okay. And you have an opportunity to call her at any time if you wanted to, isn't that right?
I was never told I could, but I guess I can.
Okay, but you haven't heard anything from her that would give you concern?
I haven't heard from her at all.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
All three of his other children are in counseling as a result of his actions. Is that correct?
They have been in counseling, yes.
Just, I may have missed it, but who is Miss Russell to him?
It's his aunt.
Right, thank you, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think Ms. Russell has joined the
She is
Zoom.
in the waiting area, so we can bring her in. All right, I think we're going to have to move on.
Okay.
Apparently,
Well,
it's not going to work.
my apologies for that.
You
Your
want to
Honor.
go ahead and make your closing argument?
Yes, just, I don't think that there's any denial. My client has not tried to deny that he has some anger issues that he needs to work through. He's submitted voluntarily to an evaluation. He is trying his best to do the steps that he needs to do to make things right and to address any concerns that the court may have, any concerns that Ms. Duffy may have. He's not in here, saying that he just wants to, everybody's wrong and he just wants to have these kids and he wants to make this right. He was with these children. He has his older children that he's had a good relationship with, that he's had 50-50 custody of. He has struggled, especially to deal with Parker, who has ADHD. And with the younger ones, he's been with them since birth until this divorce action was filed every day. And they've all been together as a family, the 5 children together on weekends, almost every weekend and during school breaks. And he agreed initially to have this limited time, this 4 hours of time that's supervised by Miss Russell. And he's been working through things this summer. He's more than happy to take this anger management for parents class that Dr. Davis has recommended. And in fact, if we had known that that was the recommendation, he would have done it sooner. The recommendation just came down with this report about a week and a half ago. Prior to that, he did what the court had previously ordered, which was the 8-week basic anger management. He's working with his therapist. He's got this diagnosis of ADHD. He's taking the medication. He can work on weaning off the medication, whatever is recommended by the providers as he goes through the parenting anger management class. But we heard from Dr. Davis today. At the end of the day, he does not think that there's anything that would warrant a change of supervisor. He did not think that what happened in the bowling alley should have warranted an end to that parenting session. He does not think that his time should be further limited than it currently is. He said that it would be appropriate for him to have a weekend of visitation. He specifically recommended that his visitation should align with his older children. Both parties confirmed today that he has his older children all but the last weekend of the calendar month. And so we have asked that he have that visitation from Friday to Sunday on the first and third weekends of the calendar month. With Miss Russell, she's available. She's his aunt. They were living together. They still live close by. She's his deceased mother's sister. He's in his deceased mother's home that can accommodate all 5 children. The suggested change of supervisor would not allow him to continue to have that time. So we would ask that the court give him the every other weekend and that it continue to be supervised by Miss Russell until he complete the 12-hour anger management for parenting class that he can sign up for right away, and that at that time his supervision be lifted if there aren't any other issues. I think what we've heard today is that Ms. Duffy is concerned about things that have happened in the past, and rightfully so. There were issues with his anger found by Dr. Davis, but he has to have an opportunity to try to make this right and to continue a relationship with his children. They deserve to see They're siblings, they deserve to see him and to try to move forward as best they can.
Duke?
Judge, it's extremely simple. He's under a microscope. He's gone through 6 anger management classes, and he's still, without Ms. Russell even paying attention to what happened, the court saw it themselves, puts his hand on the child, jerks him back, does not jerk his arm up. That was my misstatement. Jerks him back enough and yelling at him enough so that another person intervened. He admitted another person intervened. The public's not going to intervene with something that they don't think isn't outrageous behavior. I do think Dr. Davis was a little dismissive of it because you don't hear the audio and you don't see the bystander, but it happened. He admitted to it, and it was absolutely inappropriate behavior when he's under the microscope of this court. Visitation needs to stay the exact same as it is, and he needs to complete the anger management directed by Dr. Davis. And I would request that a different supervisor be put in Ms. Russell's place. Number one, because the court's heard about issues Mr. Duffy himself has had with Ms. Russell. And two, because Ms. Russell has not taken the job seriously despite being in front of this court and knowing what her obligation was. It's extremely concerning that, and Dr. Davis admitted it was bad parenting for him to want to play a video game and have an 8-year-old child with ADHD watch a 2-year-old. Mr. Duffy cannot control himself, and he needs to find an avenue for which he can control himself. By testimony of Ms. Duffy, it's just gotten worse.
Well, the hearing today is designed for the court to consider whether or not to modify the prior existing order that granted him supervised visitation, as was said. And the question I asked him is, why did he agree to the visitation being supervised if he didn't think there was some reason for it or some issue? Really is kind of academic now because it's a court order that requires supervised visitation. Based on Dr. Davis's report and Dr. Davis's testimony before the court is of the opinion that before any modification of his time upward, meaning giving him additional time, the purpose of these hearings is to try to put Mr. Duffy in a position where he can move towards a regular type of visitation schedule with his children. That may not necessarily be a equal residential time like he has with his other children, but it certainly would not be that I expect he's going to end up permanently with 4 hours a week, something on that order. So I think that under the circumstances, this is all intended to help Mr. Duffy to overcome those issues that are creating the need for him to have supervised visitation, which I would again remind you was an agreed order that was entered. It was not something I ordered because I'd heard testimony, but rather it was an agreed order that the parties entered into. Now I'm being asked to modify that by Mr. Duffy to either remove the visitation being supervised or to not make any changes. And of course, Ms. Duffy has a position that, based on what she's seen, she wants to, have a different supervisor and to reduce his time. I'm not going to reduce his time. In my opinion, Dr. Davis's recommendations are, and now that he's clarified it, because I believe there was some confusion about it and what his recommendations were, I'm not going to reduce his time, but I'm not going to increase it at this point either until he has completed that 12-hour parenting, the anger management for parents. That's the name of the one. He says you can go online and Google it. I would assume he can assist you in locating one, but it is concerning that despite the fact that he had been through 7 of the anger management classes when that video from the arcade was shown. Now, it is concerning that there were still some anger issues in that particular video, but it's also a situation where I can understand if you've got a missing child that you would become agitated and upset. But why does he have a missing child for even just that short time? That's because he put an 8 or a 9-year-old child in charge of supervising a 2-year-old child, and that is extremely poor parenting in this court's opinion. I've had children, I've had young children, and I've raised them, and I've unfortunately had to have situations where I've had to discipline them as good as they were. And one of my greatest regrets is I believe I overreacted with my son and yelled at him at school one day because I was told he had done something that he shouldn't have when he was in first grade, I think it was. And I have long regretted that. And he has a very fixed remembrance and memory of me yelling at him that way. And if I could go back and undo it, I would do it, but I can't. So he's stuck with that memory. You're creating those memories for your children. Your children are growing up knowing that their father yells at them, grabs them, jerks them around. I saw the video. I mean, you can say, I put my hand on his shoulder. You put his hand on his shoulder and you did so forcefully enough that it clearly was indicating to me and to the bystanders that you were angry and upset. I observed your demeanor while you were talking to him. That was not the demeanor of someone who was calmly talking to his child. That was someone who was angry. Now, was that child abuse? No, I don't think it was child abuse. I think it was a person who was angry and agitated because his youngest child was missing for a moment. He was agitated. He then took it out on his 9-year-old or 8-year-old son. Should never put him in that position to begin with. But that doesn't mean that you abused your child because you yelled at him. My father yelled at me a lot when I was a younger child. I have memories of that. It's not good parenting. He wasn't a good parent when he did it to me, but it's something I remember all my life. What I'm trying to get you to understand is if you look at it from a child's standpoint, an 8 or 9-year-old, they're afraid of you when you yell and cuss and carry on the way that you do. One of the things when you were asked, and I wrote it down, have you cussed your 2 and your 3-year-old child? I wrote it down and put quotation marks. Not that I'm aware of. That speaks volumes to me, that the fact that you can't even remember whether or not you cussed a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. 2 and 3-year-old children do not deserve to be cursed. That may be what you want to do to a teenager or something like that, even though I think that would be bad parenting. So I think Mr. Duffy is still in very dire need of counseling to help him come to terms with his anger and his issues. But I do not think that it requires that his time with his children be reduced. I think that he's got to learn to try to do it, and that's the only way. Mrs. Duffy chose him to be with. She chose him to have children with. And under that circumstances, it seems to me that he's going to have a right to see these children. As a result of that, the question then becomes, should we change the supervisor? This proposed supervisor that Mrs. Duffy had proposed, Miss Abby Keith, is not here today. I don't know anything about her, whether or not she would or would not be an appropriate person to supervise. At this point in time, I cannot change the supervisor without an appropriate person to substitute with who is willing to submit to the jurisdiction of the court. I will continue that Ms. Connie Russell is going to be the supervisor. It will, this order will clarify that she is to at all times stay with Mr. Duffy and the children. She's not to let him out and the children out of her sight, and that she is responsible for ensuring that that takes place. And we'll see how much this 12-hour session of anger management for parents helps Mr. Duffy. If he completes that, then we can have another hearing between now and then. If there is another incident, Ms. Duke, you are free to revisit this issue if there's some other problem. Mr. Duffy, I want you to have a good relationship with your children. I want you to be able to have an extended long periods with them. But right now, based on what has taken place and the fact that you were under a supervised visitation and that incident occurred, it does cause me some concern that, and I'm following with Dr. Duffy's recommendations to get you into this program. So let's go ahead and and get signed up for it and get that behind you, and then we can move forward with trying to restore you in a normal type situation with your children. But that is the order of the court. The court finds that this supervised visitation is currently in place shall be ordered with the proviso that Ms. Russell is directly instructed by this court in this order to make sure that she at all times monitors him and the children. And in addition to that, that as a condition, he will be required to undergo that 12-hour anger management for parenting recommended by Dr. Davis. And upon completion of that, the court will entertain a modification upward of his time with the children, and in an effort to try to restore his opportunity to be with the children on a regular basis. If there is any incident, as always, if there's any incident that occurs that causes either side to be concerned about the situation. Oh, let me also answer. Don't follow him during his visitation. It's, in my opinion, that is, as Mr. Duffy states, that was trying to trigger his anger by you following him. I can't blame him for that. You know, he's been given the opportunity to have visitation. It's already supervised. To have you following him and sitting outside the house or whatever is inappropriate. So I understand why you may have wanted to do that, why you may have thought that was appropriate, but I'm telling you, don't do it. As far as this visitation occurring on the same weekend with his other children, I'm fine with that, and I think it would be appropriate for no other reason than the children can all be together as a family, as they're all siblings. They're his half-siblings, or they're half-siblings with each other. So that should take place on the weekends that are available. Otherwise, he'll exercise it without them being there if there's a weekend that falls where it doesn't. It's not required that they have to be there, but I'm saying coordinate it where they can be.
He currently has every weekend, Your Honor, every Sunday.
That's what previously ordered, that's what will remain. We're trying to get Mr. Duffy as acclimated back into it. So, Mr. Duffy, keep in mind how you behave. How you act towards a grown-up is one thing. How you act to an 8 or 9-year-old, it makes a whole different impression. So just think about that from that perspective, because as I said, you're making memories for your children. They're going to last them their entire life. You can make those good memories, positive memories, or you can make them memories that they will regret the situation, and you will later regret, I think, if you do that. All right, Ms. Duke, will you draw the order and submit it to Ms. Morris? And that will conclude this hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor.